Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Hello, Fearless Freedom family. Dr. G back again. And this week we have Russell Nohelty. And Russell, can you tell the Fearless Freedom Tribe all about you and what you're up to?
Sure. So I'm a USA Today bestselling author and a six-figure creative entrepreneur. I run 3 companies. I own a Verizon dealership. I own a publishing company called Wannabe Press. And I own a training academy called The Complete Creative. And so that kind of puts me in a lot of spaces, and it puts me in a lot of different pies every day and every week.
Wow, that's a lot on your plate. And how did all this come about? Did you just one day decide that you were going to jump into entrepreneurship full-fledged and then branch out into all of these areas? Or was there something that triggered this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I hate being bossed. I think people do things quite inefficiently, and I'm not good. I'm not a good employee. I'm pretty good when I'm a salesperson in a company because like that's a lot of freedom. But like, I don't like when people tell me how to do a thing when I already know how to do a thing. So I kind of would. What happened throughout my career is I've started 5 or 6 companies, and the first 4 kind of blew up in my face. But I would like get a job, then I would leave that job, but instead of looking for another job, I would start a company. So I would start like a photography studio or a production company, or I would make a movie or whatever I would do. It'd always be like I kind of would have these long spurts of entrepreneurship followed by these short spurts of having a job, and until I started working. Till my last job, which I think lasted 2.5 years roughly, my longest job ever was like a year. Like if I could make it a year at a job, like that was long enough to put it on my resume, and then I would get antsy.
Interesting. And so there's some unpacking that we need to do there. So you mentioned that the first few businesses blew up. What do you mean? Can you tell the story of that?
Absolutely. So my first job ever right out of college was working on Capitol Hill. So I would do, if you ever watch the news and you see like the talking heads of like the senators and congressmen, that was basically my job. I did
Gotcha.
Fox News and CS and MSNBC and like local affiliates, and we would do like State of the Unions and Easter egg rolls. And I think I did one shot for Comedy Central once, which was cool. The Daily Show. But I quickly soured on news. So I started my first company, which was a photography company, which is still the longest company I've ever owned, I think. Maybe Wannabe Press is now older, but Wannabe Press is definitely more successful. So that company, we would shoot movies and fashion photography, and I went to Denmark on a movie once, and it was very hard. I'm not very good at photography still, at least not like motion photography. I'm pretty good as a fashion photographer, but it's way too technical for me, and I like learned that over the years. But then during that time, I also started 2 production companies, and I started the production companies because I had gear. I had all the gear I needed to shoot movies and such. So I kind of was like, okay, I partnered with one person on one project, which blew up in about 1.5 years. And then I worked out with another partner, another 2 partners to make a movie called Connections, which you can actually watch on YouTube. It's free web series. It's pretty good for a web series, but like it's not like the shining beacon of like me as a writer.
Gotcha.
But then in 2008, so the first production company was called Insert Name Here Productions, and that dissolved within like a year probably because we were just in 2 different stages of our lives. I find that with partnership, you really have to be like on the same journey, like at the same, maybe not age-wise place, but the same at least like tolerance of risk, willing to invest, willing to
Right.
invest time. And my partner was just older. You know, he was
Okay.
settled. He had
Yeah.
a family and a child, and he just couldn't do the things that like you need to do in like a small startup
Gotcha.
and like he wasn't interested in that part either. So like so that blew up. And then the next one I started, BNS Media Group, lasted a little bit longer, but then I moved to LA. And I moved to LA because I got in a car accident on my last job in DC,
Oh my
and I was in a
goodness.
neck brace for 6 months. And
What?
because of that, I couldn't shoot. I couldn't do any photography, so I pretty much lost that company right when I got in that car, because I just couldn't like lift
Right.
anything.
Physically do it. Yeah.
Right. I couldn't direct. I had directed like some stuff for the last job I had in DC was an executive producer of an internet television network. So I was like shooting stuff and writing stuff and directing stuff. And it was kind of awesome, especially towards the end when they found out that like I actually knew what I was talking about and like could actually like make content for them. It ended up being, but then I got in a car accident
Oh,
and
geez.
I couldn't direct. I couldn't do that. I lost that job because I didn't know when I would go back to work. And so that left me with basically nothing. I couldn't do anything every day except write. And so I became a writer, and I was writing movies and TV scripts. And then I moved to LA and with my wife, and I got a manager. My manager introduced me to comics, and I kind of fell in love with the medium. You know, it's visual, but also you can do it with a small team, and like it's like words and pictures moving together. And it kind of was everything that I had done in my career up until then.
Okay.
And then that company, Wannabe Press, is the one that stuck. Wannabe Press. So after I had did a bunch of projects and I had gotten some publishing deals, I realized that most publishers don't know what they're doing. And I was having like books released late or not at all, or just being put up on Amazon with like no publicity or anything to them. And I was like, look, I don't know if I can be a good publisher, but I could at least be a mediocre to bad publisher. And that's kind of how all of my companies started when I started
Wow.
writing
So
and
out of
directing.
need.
Well, it was also just because like I was like, well, like I don't know if I'm going to be great at this, but like I can at least be this bad. Like I can at least be this good. Like the bar is not that high. And what I've
Wow.
learned through my whole career is honestly the bar is not that high. Not to have like a first world bougie problem, but like I find this with like the people we hire to like garden, our gardener and like our landscaper and our maid, like they just like don't show up. Like we've
Uh-oh.
had dozens of them and they just like won't show up or text or say anything. And
Oh,
that's
wow.
kind of
That's
the
not good.
standard that I found for like not just them, but like writers and artists. And like most people just don't even do the courtesy of showing up or trying to put forth the effort or like having a plan. And
Got it.
if you can just kind of like have a plan and then stick to it and execute it and like show up, it's kind of pathetic how easy it is to like blow people's expectations out of the water because the bar is just so low. Now I make beautiful books and I release them on time and like I do all the things that you're supposed to do, but like basically doing what you're supposed to do is like this mind-blowing thing where it's like you delivered me a book on the day you said you were going to. That's beautiful. And I'm like, yes, that is pretty much that's like the job of a publisher. Like if nothing else, the job of a publisher is like put together the book, make sure it's nice and then send it to you.
Right.
So like, but like you get so much credit for just doing the bare minimum because most people won't even do the bare minimum. And then if you can take that bare minimum and like 10x it, you end up like blowing people's minds.
Huh. So, there's a lot of things there, right? Because you said that each business that you launched essentially was based out of a necessity on your part, right? You had a need, you needed someone to actually do the things that are necessary for publishing. So you started your publishing company. You had, you wanted to be out there with your photography. You just started that. You had no background, no training whatsoever, but you just did it. So was there ever any fear surrounding that? I mean, because that's kind of a gangster, entrepreneurial move. Most entrepreneurs, either they jump in, not ready, but just jump in to get started, or they sit back and they deliberate and they watch all the trainings and they do all the things before they are ready to jump in. So what do you think? Was there any fear related to any of those
Oh, there's
launches?
fear right now. Like every day I have fear. Like I always fear that the last sale I made is the last sale I'm ever going to make. I don't think that you can I don't think it's smart to have a company without massive amounts of fear. The trick is how can you uh, try anyway, and
Right.
and how can you mitigate that fear? So for instance, one of the things that I often say is, Mike Tyson doesn't like getting punched in the mouth any more than I do. The
Right.
difference is that he knows that there's a championship belt at the end of that journey if he gets punched enough, and he can avoid getting punched enough, and if he can get down and get back up. And he used to throw up after every match. Before every time he got into the ring, he was so afraid of of all of the pieces that go into that. And I think that, for all the things that Mike Tyson has done that I'm not a fan of, like that is very telling of, he would do it even though he was like throwing up from fear and
Mhm.
nervousness. And it's not easy at the beginning. A lot of people think that when you start, like the people that succeed were like just born without fear, or they were born without like this like drive to like not be made to look like a fool. Most people are less fear-based and more, they don't want to look like a fool in front of their community, is what I
Yes.
find.
Yes.
And if you can sort of make like get over that idea and understand that like your community is probably not the one who's going to buy your work or understand you.
Right.
They're like I have changed and moved, and my friends have like friends from college. Like my best man at my wedding, I rarely talk to anymore, just because like I'm at a different stage.
Got it.
Like he's been
Yeah.
at the same job for 15 years, and I've had like 5 companies in that same 15-year span. Like it's not that I don't love him; it's just that as you grow in your job and you grow in the thing that you're doing, like you're probably going to shed some friends, and not out of love, just out of like you're in a new area. You've maybe
Yeah.
moved to a new place. You may have done another, you may have started a company, but like those people who like are not going to understand that journey that you're on, like they probably will fall away. And that's very sad.
It is.
But there is a new community that you that you sort of form, and like they understand the fear, and they're the ones that like can catch you when you fall, and they're the ones that understand this craziness. And
And
I'm
it is
very blessed.
craziness.
Yeah, not very blessed that my wife is not into this at all. Like this, like she is just like, she's been at the same job for like many years. She's had
Okay.
very few jobs in her life, but she also understands that like I hate having jobs. In
Gotcha.
fact, I often, when I'm had a bad month or a bad week, I'm like, I should just go get a job. And she's like, you will be insufferable. Like, please don't put me through that. And I'm like, really? Like, you're the one that's telling me not to. So I do think there's some value in like being grounded and like having people from your past to like fall back on, who
Mm.
remember you before you were this person. But um there the you asked about fear, and
Yes.
I think that the for me, for most entrepreneurs that I talk to, the fear is like, what are other people going to think? And I have found the best response to that is like, maybe these people will not get it, but the right people will get it. And like these
Yes.
people over here, if you open yourself up, and I am so I'm very vulnerable in my company. I'm very open with like the good and the bad, and like the mindset stuff, and how I was suicidal last year, and like all of the things that like have gone on my company. I'm very open and vulnerable about. And the more open and vulnerable I am, it would seem like, I would be more fearful, but I'm actually less fearful because more people are open up to me about like their experience, and they open up to me about like how hard one thing or another thing was for them. And knowing that I'm not in it alone is quite a powerful remedy for fear.
Nice. No, so it sounds like acknowledging that everyone is not your person, or everybody aren't your people, and then acknowledging that there is a need for stable support, right? Acceptance of this journey and how kind of haphazard it can be, and how it's not the norm. So people don't always understand what you're doing. They think you're crazy half the time. That's normal. And if you're looking for acceptance from everyone, you're not going to get it. And so you just need to focus on your people, your tribe. That's what it sounds like
Absolutely.
you're saying. Yeah. And
I
then
mean,
do it
so
anyway, right?
yeah, so that is the thing that like really helps the fear is like once you have a little audience or a big audience or your audience grows and you can see that like people are buying your stuff and like there is a market for the thing that you're selling. And creativity is so weird because like you're not selling something that's helping somebody. Like you like most jobs are like, I am a psychologist, so if you come to me and we will do X, and I will help you do X. Or like I am a building contractor. If you need a building, I am the person who can then fill that need for you. But authors and creative types, like they don't really do that. Like their job is to make things that sort of edify the soul, like and it's just very over and it's such a precious thing and it could be broken so easily. Like it's once you've made one house, you kind of understand what a house looks like.
Mm-hmm.
When you've made a book, the next book is like as equally hard to make as the first book was. And so there's always this fear that comes in that you're going to break it. I call it Game of Thrones syndrome. Like they didn't break it until like they had the #1 show in the world until like literally 3 episodes, like 3 episodes of Game of Thrones broke the entire series. And like
yes, indeed.
they had 7.5 seasons of like mediocre to great television, and like 3 episodes broke the whole thing. And so
yes.
like in that like that's the biggest show in the world, and like even they have the ability to like break a thing like
Yes.
with very I don't think you could be a creative without having that fear. And I think that's why creatives are so neurotic, because there's not a blueprint. There's a kind of blueprint for like the books you make, but like,
Right.
Are people going to move on from the books that you like? Like oftentimes they do. And or are you going to break the world by like moving it into a different direction? And, there's not that in a lot of most other fields. Like if you know how to build a wall, like there's no fear that you're not going to build the wall the next time. You just have to follow the steps.
Yeah.
But following the steps in creativity still means you could break everything. And so it's a very delicate balance between that like has a lot of fear, because like you want to do, and also every creative project you grow, so you want to do something different. But when you keep going back to the same universes or the things people like you have to try and tamp down that thing that you want to say, or like the new thing, so that you can make it narratively consistent across your books or your paintings or your series. So I what really helps fear is time and doing it. People really, we were talking off camera about how I just bought a new dog. I just like adopted a new dog. And, we're going nuts because like the big dog and the little dog are not our current little dog, we have to keep them in different rooms, and it's like exhausting. And, we are, I had to get up at like 1:30 to walk the dog because like she wouldn't go out beforehand. So we had to like get up in the middle of the night, and I do not live in a good neighborhood. So I was not like super excited about that.
Right.
But like, I know that the more time the dogs spend together, the more they will bond. And in the same way, the more times you do things where you can overcome that fear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying like go and like skydive, because I won't do that.
Nothing
like,
that's
I won't
dangerous
skydive or
your
bungee jump or
person.
any of that thing. But just like if you can sort of, if this is your comfort zone and like you can just inch it slightly, little by little out, you suddenly have this comfort zone that's way bigger. And you're just like, over time, you are growing so that when the fear sets in, you're not like, it's overwhelming, but like it is also on some level, like I find the fear helpful, because I'm like, oh, this is like this is why I'm feeling that fear. Like this is where the fear is coming from. Like this is the good fear. This is the good fear before a book launch, because I don't know how it's going to go.
Right.
And like I never want to not fear a book launch, because then I'm not growing. And so on some level, like that fear is tied to like the unknown and like a thing where I don't know how it's going to go. So it is expanding the zone of what I'm comfortable with. And I have, I was not always able to like run big launch campaigns or like have a big audience, or, we have 20,000 people on our mailing list. And like, I have pretty big social media presences for an author, especially an unknown author in most circles. That's like not New York Times bestseller famous or anything, but that all comes little by little. They say there's this story about this, this warrior goes into this room, and like on top of it is this door, and like it's the door to beating this dungeon.
Yeah.
And so he's not ready. He's got like very cheap clothes on, and like he can never face the battles that are on the way. But like over time, he takes a step, gets up a better sword, picks up a better shield, gets better armor on.
Yes.
He learns how to like beat the traps. He learns how to like fight the dragon, and like suddenly he can walk through that door easily. And people are like, well, why can you walk through that door so easily now? And it's like, because he wasn't the human that could walk through that door until he became the human that could walk through that door. Mm-hmm. And I probably butchered the parable because I always do, but I've always taken comfort in this idea that like you have to become the person who can easily walk through that door. And when you become that person, you can walk through it easily. And you'll be like, why couldn't I always walk through it easily? And it's because you kind of had to like kill that old person, or like that old person had to grow to become you.
Wow. Yeah, so that's a great point that you made about not even recognizing who you were even a month ago, a year ago, just because you were constantly growing. And I say this to the tribe all the time. I'm like, look, in order for growth to happen, you have to be uncomfortable. You have to just have a little bit of scary thing that you do every single day. And that's how you're going to get to the point where you're like that warrior, where you can literally walk through the door. And you described that very beautifully. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So tell the audience a little bit more about how some logistics. So because there's several people who are listening to this who are thinking about entrepreneurship. They may be a lot of people who listen to this are in the field of medicine or in health professions. But these concepts still apply. And what I'm talking about is, you mentioned that you had a mailing list of 20,000 individuals. Can you speak to how you did that? Because obviously it's not something that happened overnight. That took time and effort.
Sure. So yes, I spent 2 years getting a mailing list of 2,000 people, and then 2 years growing it from 2,000 to 20,000 people. I actually grew up to 70 or 100,000 people, and it's a lot of fat in that list. So we cut it down from like 100,000 to 20,000. Like it usually ranges every 3 months. I kind of cut it down again, and it usually ranges between like 15 and 20,000 people. You can make a lot of money from a small list. So half of my revenue last year came from my list of 20,000 people. Mm-hmm. Half of my revenue came from a list of 300 people.
Oh, interesting.
So the difference is that my big mailing list is for my books, and my small mailing list is for my marketing services. So you can have a very powerful targeted list that like grows naturally over time, or that you add one person at a time, and it can make you a lot of money. Like I made $60,000 roughly on that list last year between course sales and then marketing services that I did for them. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
That is for 300 people. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so the same amount of money as with 20,000 people. So that is a very important thing to know. The other thing to know is we talked about, just to follow up on fear again, is the nice thing about fear is that most people are paralyzed from it. So if you can move past it even a little bit, you will be further ahead than the next person. And the more fear you can sort of learn how to deal with and manage, the further ahead you'll sort of be. I find all of the time people saying, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, like the hardest part of doing the thing is like actually just doing it. And one of the problems with like, how do you grow a mailing list or how do you grow all of this stuff is there's so much information that people are hiding behind a gate. And because their job is to help you grow a mailing list, they make it seem more complicated than it actually is. And it's not complicated. The problem is like, you don't know what resonates with your audience until like you send emails. Right. So people want like the template for the perfect email, but no one's perfect email is going to be the same. I used to send these like perfect emails from all of these other people, and I would test all of them. And
Right.
you know what converted, which email converted the best out of the hundreds of perfect emails that I tested? The one I wrote to
Wow.
my people, because I
Yes.
knew them better than
Yeah.
they did. So, you know, there's really no perfect part of this. And my career is nothing. It teaches nothing. It's like, it's got to get sloppy before it gets precise. And
Yes.
the more sloppiness you can kind of, you know, I've sent emails where like half of my list unsubscribed because like I said something wrong, or like I pushed a bound that I wasn't supposed to, or like I've had emails that like I still like that don't do very well versus ones that do great. And it's just, there's a sloppiness in entrepreneurship that most people are not comfortable with. And like,
Right.
if you're not comfortable with like that sort of messiness, then there's probably not, entrepreneurship is probably not for you. There's systems that you can put in place once you've done it for a long time, which have less sloppiness, but
Right.
there's always going to be some unknowable, because if you're always growing into another area, you always are going to be hitting like something that you don't know. And like
Absolutely.
the gurus are going to make it seem more complicated than it actually is. Every book you read makes it seem more complicated than it actually is, and easier than it actually is at the same time. So
Right.
the number one question that entrepreneurs ask me is, what do I make for my audience? My response is always the same. It's like, if you're asking me that question, it means you don't know your audience well enough, and you need to go back and do a whole lot of work, because like the minute that you know your audience well enough to predict what they want, you will never ask that question again. And so if you're asking that question, it means you don't know your audience well enough. So that is the number one piece of advice that I can give people. A business is three things. It is an audience, a product, and profit.
Yes.
So if you have an audience, you can make and you know the product that they will buy, which has and that audience then has the lowest customer acquisition cost and the highest lifetime value, and that product has a profit. You then can use that profit, a part of that profit, to find more people like the audience that you already have. If your company is broken, it is broken at one of those three places. Either you don't know your audience well enough, / you don't have a big enough audience, you don't have a product. You don't have the right product, you don't have a product with the right profit margin. So all of the once you have the right audience for the right product that gives you a profit margin, you then have a company. And
Boom.
that product could be services or products. Like
Right.
It could be, an hour of coaching, it could be a course, it could be a book, whatever it is. You have to know sort of what your audience wants. So the biggest problem people have is they have no idea who their audience is. So this is the question that I ask everybody: tell me about your audience. Make it so specific that it feels like one person is in your, like you're talking to one person. And every time I get the same rough response: oh, they're like 18 to 85-year-old women, maybe men, that like wear hats and like soup, or like whatever the thing is. And I'm like, that is not one person. Like, give me one person.
Oh my gosh.
And don't tell me demographic information. Like, you wouldn't tell me that your mother was 85. Like, the first thing that you say, you would say like, oh, my mother, like, she makes the best cake, or like, she loves Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, or, you would tell me about her. You wouldn't say like, well, my mother is a 62-year-old white female who lives in Virginia and went to school here. Like, nobody describes humans like that,
Right.
except
Yeah.
marketing people. So
Right.
what you really need to know is like, what are the psychographic information behind your customer? Like, what makes them love you? What makes them buy from you? What makes you unique? And what makes them unique? So
Right.
if you look behind me, you'll see a painting of a bee. That is Melissa, the wannabe. She is our mascot. She is everything that a good wannabe is supposed to be. So
Okay.
notice she's not a human. She's a bee. Like,
She's a bee, yeah.
I've poured all of like the good wannabe press, complete creative sort of like stuff into her. She's rebellious and anti-authority and practical,
Okay.
and and creative and snarky, and like she loves to laugh, and you know she goes to like punk clubs, and like she's the kind of girl who like went to like snuck out of her house and like went to punk clubs on like Tuesday night when she was in high school, and probably is now like working a desk job somewhere.
Right.
So like she's got this like punk rock anti-authority attitude about her, and you know she doesn't like flowy language. She just like wants you to get to the point. So that is what makes a good wannabe press person. And I think that I've never described that kind of person that somebody could not picture in their brain somebody that was like, yeah,
yes,
of course, that's
yes.
my cousin, that's my brother, that's my whatever, that's my friend. That is what you're trying to get to, because I have fans from 18 to 85, and like they don't have anything in common except this attitude that they kind of like this swagger that they kind of have, like, and not everybody that fits into that category.
Right.
It's just like my ideal customer who has the lowest acquisition cost and the highest lifetime value. That means the lowest cost to acquire the first sale from them, and the most money they will spend throughout the course of their life, like on a product of mine, is that kind of person. Now, there are all sorts of like sweet little old ladies and like erudite dudes who like my work as well.
Right.
But like that punk rock attitude is the thing that like the core wannabe press fan has.
Got it.
And that is the kind of like detail that you need to have when you're describing your audience, because I never have to worry like what to make. I have ideas, and then I say, well, is Melissa gonna like that?
Right.
I also like have people in my audience that I can be like, is Colin gonna like that? Is Andrew gonna like that? Is Jen gonna like that? You know, and it like makes it so much easier to be like, yes, that's a yes. No, that's a maybe. I don't ever have to do the promotion that like is not going to drive people to the network of stuff that I have if I don't think that I can hit people in that sort of category. And then it also helps me when I go on shows like this that like I talk a very specific way, and like my job is to amplify that way that I talk so that somebody who really resonates with it will try my show, The Complete Creative, or like go to thecompletecreative.com or go to russellnohelty.com and like get my books. And it's very easy that like someone is going to say, hell yes, that's me, or they're going to say, and as long as some people are saying, hell yes, that's me, then like that's I'm happy, because I don't, you know, nobody takes action if to bland things. Like people settle for Wonder Bread, but like they're not going out and telling other people about how great Wonder Bread is. Like they are. So you want to be, people are going out and seeking it out when they like are like, that is exactly what I've been looking for, or like that is something I'm interested in, or like whatever that piece is, that is what they are running towards. And you want people to either be running towards you or running away from you.
Yeah, because, sorting. You want sorting to happen.
Exactly. And so that is sort of the level that you want like your audience. And it's really easy to go, I'm going to assume that you have no audience, not you specifically, but like the people listening to this have no audience. If you've got an audience already that is buying from you, then all you have to do is find the people that are spending the most, like over the longest amount of time, not the people that are engaging the most, people that are actually spending the most on your product, and talk to those people. And then follow the same sort of stuff that we're talking about. But I'm going to assume you've never made a sale, because most entrepreneurs like are at the beginning of their careers and they haven't made a sale. So the easiest thing to do when you first start out to get this to happen is to find a person who likes you, but not enough to lie to you. So that means no family members, no close friends, nobody who's going to give you money just to shut you up. Like, the best example I have is I'm nearing my 20-year high school reunion, and there's a lot of people that were on my friend list for a long time who would like, I never interacted with really, but like they would interact with my post or like comment on my post, or like, and I was like, why are we still friends? Like, it's been 10 years. We're never close, but like you guys are still talking to me while like other people are not talking to me who I knew a lot better in high school. So I knew there was like something about those kind of people. And it's important to note that you want to find somebody who, when you post about the thing you want to make, they are commenting on those posts. Not just like if you're not like commenting on your dog, if you're going to like make crochet stuff, but like commenting on the crochet stuff when you're talking about crochet stuff. And usually somebody, again, has an idea of like one kind of person who, like one person they can remember and be like, okay, that's Susie or Tom or Bob or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
And your job then is to be like, hey, Susie, I'm thinking about making this product. I'd love to talk with you for about half an hour just to catch up with you and like ask you some questions. They may seem a little weird, but like they're really going to help me. Do you mind? Usually they don't mind.
Yes.
And then you message them or set up the time, and you're like, okay, so I need to. What you're trying to figure out is like, A, why they like you. Like,
Mhm.
what is it? What is about you that like? Are you really practical? Are you really elegant? Like, are you really funny? You know, what is the thing that like you have? Are you super detail oriented? Like, what is it about you that like makes them sort of like keep coming back for more?
Right.
And you know, where they hang out, also what brands they like, where like Facebook groups they hang out with, all of the kind of information, like how do they like being contacted, all of those things. Like you just like need to find sort of a baseline, and that becomes sort of like your hypothesis, right? And
Yes.
so that is one person. Now you've got one person. Your goal is to find 10. And so it's really easy to find 10. You do that 9 more times.
Right.
And what you're trying to do is find some sort of like consistency among them.
Right.
Because Susie will say one thing and you'll be like, oh, well, these are where my people hang out. And then Bob and Trevor and Angela say totally different stuff. And what you're looking for is sort of like what the baseline kind of personality between them all are. And you
Right.
pretty much know their personality or reminded in that half an hour of like what kind of qualities they have. So you want to just like talk to those people. It might not be 10, it might be like 13, it might be 7, but like 10's a good number.
Yeah.
Now, and that sort of amalgamates like the consistency amalgamates sort of an ideal audience for you. And it's really important that you don't just send a survey. You actually are talking to these people, because people don't respond to surveys, and you're going to learn stuff by just talking to them that you did not know otherwise. So now we've got kind of your audience, but now we need a product. So product's a little bit harder, but you already know what product you kind of want to make. So your goal now is to talk to these people about the kind of thing that you're thinking about making, the kind of like what they need, what they see in the market, like all of that stuff about like what they like and what they're not seeing, and then make a little product. It could be like I like $20 is a good number, like something that costs $20, because nobody gives $20 to somebody for free. Like there's they give $5 to just shut you up, but like $20 is like, well, that's a movie, that's like going out to dinner, that's something.
Yeah.
But it's also like not much, because it's only dinner. It's like one dinner. Like we burn $20 bills like all the time on like kind of things we like. So you don't want something like $300, because then the price point might be too high for somebody. You want something that like is a good like base product. And if like making something really expensive, then make a part of it. You know, make like a $20 book, or like make a kickstand if you're making a bicycle. And so now you're gonna make something that they told you they wanted, use the messaging they told you they wanted, and just like make a PayPal link. Nothing fancy, just make a PayPal link and like be like, hey, remember that thing? Here's how you buy it. And your goal is to get at least 5, hopefully more like 8 or 9 people to buy that thing.
Right.
Once you do, and you see that there's a profit margin, then you have what like your pre-validation concept is. If it doesn't work, if you can't sell it to 5 or 10 people, then like you had to redo it and like figure out, because the thing is, these people will tell you what they want, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what they want.
Right.
So they talk out of the side of their mouth. So like your goal is to be like, when they say this, what they mean is this. And once you have that, you start going into the groups that these people said that they frequent and finding more people like them and finding ways. And your goal in this third stage is to go from 10 buyers to 100 buyers. The process there is these people already know, like, and trust you.
Right.
So you want to find a method that gets someone from not knowing who you are to trusting you and buying from you.
Right.
And so this is where you have automation sequences and like one-on-one consulting, or whatever the thing is. Like you find the process that works for you to get from 10 to 100 in the cheapest and most efficient way possible. And so you're always doing tons of testing during this time. My automation sequence is too long. It's too short.
Right.
But how do I like make this? How do I like change these challenges and these challenges here? But eventually, hopefully by the time you get to 100, you like have 100 buyers who are like your ideal human. And now you can use those for lookalike audiences or anything that you want. And now you're like, well, you bought like the cheap thing. Here's
Right.
the real thing. And hopefully you launch a Kickstarter or do some sort of like pre-order. And now you're validating like the actual idea. And hopefully now you're taking that 100 and finding 100 more people.
Right.
And once you've got 200 people, a profit margin, you now can dump a lot of that marketing into finding new people. Like you've already developed the process. Like you've developed it basically for free over 6 months or a year or 6 weeks or however long it talks. And then you're off to the races, and you can use that to scale the rest of your company.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. That is awesome. That was some great great pearls that you just dropped there. Thank you so much for enlightening the audience about that cycle, because I feel like there's a lot out there, like you mentioned, a lot of advice, a lot of situations that people are like, oh, you can do it from here to here, but they never actually break down the steps, which you just did very succinctly and very specifically, which is great. And I think that the audience is going to really benefit from that. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And so,
And I have
Russell,
a whole webinar for free webinar at thecompletecreative.com/audience, which walks through this step also.
oh, awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So you guys definitely check that out, because then you can get even more information from Russell that, can help you on your journey. Because I know several of you are just starting out on your entrepreneurial journeys. And these are the things that you kind of wish you knew at the beginning versus kind of falling on your face multiple times and never really having putting it together a course and then putting the thing out and then nobody signing up. And the reason being is because you didn't do it in the proactive way. You kind of did it in the reactive way. So great pearls. Absolutely. Great pearls. So Russell, we are at that point in the show where we do our tradition. We wrap things up and we fill in the blanks. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. All right. So the first one is, to me, fearless freedom means
that I can do anything with that I can do anything that I set out to do and overcome the fear that it will take to get there.
Awesome. 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 The next one is, if I am fearless, I will.
Fearless is such a hard word because I don't think you can do anything that like fearlessly. I think that you when you are fearless, you have the courage to overcome the fear that you have, and knowing that it will be hard but achievable to get to wherever you want to go.
Okay, that's fair. Absolutely. And then what about that very last one, which is, my battle cry is?
Screw them. I want to say the bad word, but I won't for this thing. But it's honestly, that would be like the battle cry. But it's more
Yes.
like maybe it'll work out. I don't know if it'll work out. We used to have this spirit in entrepreneurship in this country where it wasn't looking at every data point and saying well, we should do this thing. It was more I don't know if that's going to work. Let's try it and see, and maybe it'll work, and maybe it'll be wonderful, and maybe it'll be terrible. And I think that we have lost that, and we've now become a country that I love data. I'm a very data-driven person. But at some point, the biggest successes in my career have come from me being well, I know you're saying that it's not going to work, but my taste says that it is going to work.
Right.
Ichabod Jones' Monster Hunter, our big breakout book, Monsters and Other Scary Shit. Most of the things that people told me were never going to work. And I mean, publishers, big publishers, and friends of mine who are published, that's never going to work. I was maybe it won't, and then I can relaunch it differently.
There you go.
But the beauty of you being an entrepreneur is that you have a special sauce that makes you. You have a special way to look at the world, and at some point other people are going to say, well, that's not going to work, and they're looking at the data to say that's not going to work because it never has worked, and it probably won't work. It probably won't work. And you have to be okay with that, but you also have to be okay with the opposite. If you never take those big swings, nobody will ever be like, oh, look at that thing that he did, or look at that thing that she did, or like, wow, like look at this interesting thing that like didn't exist.
Right.
The idea of entrepreneurship is you're putting things into the world that don't exist, that fill a need. And so
Yes.
if you look too much at the data, you will see that well, it's never existed before, so there must be a reason it's not existing, and thus it should not exist. And so my that is a much more nuanced battle cry than screw 'em, but
Right.
it's like, maybe we should try it. Maybe we should try it and just like see what happens and go from there.
Yeah, nah, sounds good. And then just to make sure that the audience knows how to reach out to you, say your website again so that they can, in case they're not seeing the show notes, so they can get that down.
Sure. So my publishing company is called Wannabe Press. My training academy is called The Complete Creative. The Complete Creative is also a podcast with almost 200 episodes, has epic blog posts. It has free courses, paid courses, and a whole lot more on there. A lot of people say, well, that's great, but like, what do you actually make to like show that you can teach people? And if you want to see the thing that I make, which are proof of concepts all for like the concepts I teach, russellnohelty.com. If you like magic, mythology, and monsters, that's kind of my brand. Magic, mythology, monster, like novels, comics, anthologies, and such.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for being on the show today. And you definitely dropped some nice pearls in regard to fear and in regard to entrepreneurship, in regard to launching and just doing it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So thank you.
You're welcome.